In the audio world, we're all obsessed with getting things perfect, right? We have plugins that can perform surgery on a sound and DAWs with more tracks than we know what to do with. But what if chasing that digital perfection is the very thing making our mixes feel sterile? We've all heard the story. Plugins have made hardware obsolete. Everything is faster, cheaper, and better in the box. But what if that speed and convenience comes at a cost? Today, we're going to go way beyond the old analog is warmer debate. We're talking about how the limitations and the hands-on feel of hardware can completely change how you connect with music and honestly, make you a better mixer. I've been recording and mixing metal music for almost 15 years. I've done albums completely inside a computer and ones recorded on a big analog console. And for a long time, I was totally sold on the digital dream. But I started to feel like something was missing, not just from the sound, but from how I was working. The real magic of analog gear isn't just about the transformers and tubes. It's about how it forces you to think, to work, and to feel. This isn't some nostalgic rant about how plugins are bad. Think of it as exploring a different mixing philosophy, one built on commitment, feel, and a physical connection to what we're creating. We'll break this down into 3 big ideas: the sound, the hands-on experience, and the creative workflow. By the end, you'll see why even in 2025, getting your hands on physical gear can be the secret to a more inspiring and musical mix. First, let's just get the obvious thing out of the way, the sound itself. Everyone loves to throw around the word warmth. But what does that even mean? Usually when people talk about analog warmth, what they're really hearing is harmonic distortion. Every single piece of analog gear, from a compressor to a console, leaves its own unique fingerprint on the sound. These are the little artifacts and nonlinearities that digital was literally designed to get rid of. Think about it. You're pushing electricity through the physical parts. Tubes, transformers, and transistors all color the sound in ways we tend to find really pleasing. They add new frequencies, harmonics, that are musically related to the original note. Some harmonics add richness and body, while others can add a bit of bite and excitement. This isn't a defect, it's character. It's why running a vocal through a real LA2A or slamming your drum bus through a hardware 1176 just feels bigger and more three-dimensional than using the plug-in version. Now, plugins have gotten insanely good at copying this, but they're modeling a system they already know. Real hardware can be beautifully unpredictable, especially when you start pushing it. That sweet spot of saturation you get from driving a preamp is kind of a natural compression and excitement that makes a track feel present and alive without just cranking the volume knob. That's the glue people are always talking about. It's the sum of all these tiny imperfections that makes everything sound like one cohesive record. A lot of pros will tell you that while plugins get you 95% of the way there, that last 5%, that depth, that feeling that the mix is jumping out of the speakers, that often lives in the hardware. So yeah, it sounds different, it sounds human, but that's just the start of it. So this is the real heart of the argument, and it's the part that gets totally ignored in most hardware versus software debates. Using analog gear is just a completely different physical act. When you're mixing in a computer, you're staring at waveforms, meters, and plug-in windows. You're using a mouse to click and drag one thing at a time. It's precise, sure, but it's also disconnected. Mixing with hardware is a hands-on, tactile thing. It's all muscle memory. Your hands are on the faders and knobs. You can literally close your eyes and just listen. You can grab an EQ with your left hand and a compressor with your right, making 2 connected changes at once, sculpting the sound like you're playing an instrument, not operating software. That immediate physical feedback creates a much deeper and more intuitive connection to the music. Think about just riding a vocal fader. On a console, your finger is the level. You feel the dynamics of the performance and you react. With a mouse, you're drawing automation lanes. It's clinical. One is a performance, the other one is data entry. The simple act of touching the gear keeps your brain in a creative flow state. You're not just looking at your mix on a screen, you're physically in it, which pushes you to make bolder, more musical choices based only on what you hear, not what you see. That process alone is one of the best forms of ear training you could possibly get. You learn to trust your ears because they're your main guide. Now, this part might sound a little backward, but one of the biggest strengths of analog gear is its limitations. Inside a DAW, you're faced with the tyranny of infinite choices, infinite tracks, infinite plugins, infinite undos. You could spend 3 hours on a single snare sound, scrolling through hundreds of options, only to end up right where you started. It's called decision paralysis, and it's a total creativity killer. Hardware gives you healthy boundaries. You only have so many channels. You only have a few pieces of outboard gear. That scarcity makes you more deliberate. You have to commit. When you dial in an EQ on a console and print it, that's the sound. Decision made. You move on. This forces you to think like a producer from the jump, asking, what does this song actually need? Instead of, What other cool thing can I add? This workflow pushes the whole process forward. There were times where I would spend a whole day on a lead vocal, just cycling through every single compressor plugin I owned. I was stuck trying to figure out which one sounded the best. Then when I finally bought my first distressor, I found a sound I loved in 5 minutes and recorded it. And it's still my go-to compressor on a main vocal. By committing, I was free to actually mix the rest of the song, to focus on the balance and the emotion. That limitation wasn't a problem. It was liberating. This way of working also invites happy accidents, those little sonic surprises that give a mix its unique character. You might patch something wrong or push a piece of gear into a sweet spot you didn't know existed, and suddenly you have a moment of magic you never would have found in a preset menu. So is analog gear better than plugins? That's the wrong question. Digital tools are incredible. They give us precision and convenience we could have only dreamed of a few decades ago. There's a reason the best studios in the world are hybrid. They use the best of both worlds. Real argument for using hardware isn't about being a snob or replacing your plugins. It's about changing your entire creative process. It's about realizing the sound is only part of the story. The other parts, the hands-on experience and the focused workflow, are arguably more important. Analog gear connects you to the music on a physical level. It makes you listen more carefully and mix with your gut, not just your eyes. Its limits free you from the paralysis of too many options, pushing you to make strong, confident decisions that actually serve the song. It's not about being an elitist. It's just about knowing that the tools we choose have a huge impact on the art we make. So the next time your mix feels a little too perfect, a little too lifeless, the answer might not be another plugin. It might be reaching out and actually touching the sound. I'm really curious to hear from you all. What's the one piece of hardware you can't live without? The one that just inspires you every time you power it on? Let me know down in the comments. And if you found this useful, think about subscribing for more deep dives into the art of making music. Thanks for watching.